Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out to the flower show this year, and thanks for stopping by to learn about attracting beneficials and pollinators to your gardens. My name is Lori Metz. I'm a landscape designer from Nazareth. I've been working in the Lehigh Valley for 16 years. And if you have any questions afterwards, please let me know. I try to limit them while we're talking in case it gets too off the subject. So if you need to reach me, I'm on Facebook. I have email, I have phone number. Please feel free to give me a call, and I have a gift for you afterwards so you can have a way to get in touch with me. All right, I had to put a little warning in here. Viewer discretion is advised. There is some graphic content, so I'll try to warn you ahead of time when there's bugs eating other bugs. So you can turn your eyes if you don't want to see it. All right, everybody thinks bugs are so yucky. Ew, yuck, nobody wants bugs. But bugs are very, very beneficial. So hopefully, all little kids usually like bugs, and then we teach them, no, step on them, squish them. Bugs are bad, but they're very helpful. Of the over 1 million types of insects in the world, only 5% of those are actually harmful. The rest of them are either don't bother anybody or they're beneficial. And the way they're beneficial is that they prey on other insects. Okay. Everybody likes little baby animals. They're all real cute and cuddly, even little lizards, little baby chicks. But when you see little baby insects, nobody likes them, you know. But this guy at the bottom is kind of cute on the left, right? This little caterpillar. This little guy right here. This one looks kind of like an alien, but nobody usually wants to cuddle. I don't know why. No. But what they are very interesting, actually. This one at the top is not a good guy. He is a bad guy. We don't like him so much, but he is an invader from another country. This is a Japanese beetle grub, or their larva. This is when you treat your lawn for grubs in the summer. This is what you're treating for. And then they turn into Japanese beetles and come out and eat all your roses and your fruit trees and, you know, cherry trees and plums. And we want to try to limit those if we can. This little guy here is a spicebush swallowtail caterpillar. And you would think these are his eyes right here, but they're not. They're camouflage. They're made to look like eyes to scare the predators away so he doesn't get eaten. His eyes are actually way down here at the bottom. They're very hard to see. You have to see them from the side. But those aren't really his eyes. They just look like it. This one over here that looks like an alien is actually a honeybee. And of course, we all know how helpful honeybees are for pollinating. And anybody know what this is? I bet you've all held one on purpose. Exactly. That's the larva of a firefly or a lightning bug, which is Pennsylvania's state insect. Did you all know we have a state insect? See, now you can rest easy tonight because you're not going to have to worry about not having an insect for a state representative anymore. So they're also beneficial. The larvae of fireflies are actually predaceous. They feed on other insect larvae in the ground and snails and slugs. So until they grow up and then come out of the ground and try to find a mate, and when they're mating is when they're flashing. And each species has a different flash pattern. Kind of interesting. And if any of you are into TV shows, lightning bugs are also called fireflies, which is a very good short-lived TV show, but you know, didn't last very long. Very good show though. Another good, I'm into movies. Popular culture is a good way to explain a lot of things for non-plant people. So when I talk about insects and diseases, I call this my Van Helsing principle. Anybody ever see Van Helsing? No movie people here? No? Okay. So Van Helsing, he walks into this town. He says, I just need to know two things. What is it and how do I kill it? So before you kill anything, insects, spiders, whatever, identify it. Find out what it is first and then figure out how to kill it. Don't just go killing or using all kinds of chemicals on it. So to identify plants, insects, the beneficial insects, we know some of the common ones that are easy to identify. Everybody knows praying mantises, right? But if you saw these in your yard, would you know what they were? I have a few samples here. If you've never seen one in person, I'd like to see that. If you feel them, it actually feels kind of like insulating foam. If you can touch them, feel them a little bit. So people see these on their plants and they think that they're some sort of gall or some sort of disease, or they cut it off and they want to throw it away or step on it. But what that is actually mantid egg casings. From that little ball will hatch several hundred little baby praying mantises. So if you see those, you want to try to keep them in your yard. When I'm out working in people's yards, if I trim them off a shrub, I try to take that little piece of branch and I put it back into the place I cut it off of, back inside the shrub after I trim it. Because when they hatch, you want to have as many of those beneficial mantids out there eating the rest of the bad bugs as you can. Another one that's very familiar to everybody are ladybugs or lady beetles. Technically, they're not in the bug family, they're in the beetle family. But if you saw ladybugs, which come in black, red with 2 black spots, you can see all the different colors, yellow and black, stripy, all different color lady beetles. They are all eat lots and lots of aphids. But the larvae eat actually more than the adults do, or just as many. Oh, thank you. And if you saw this guy in your yard, you might say, "Oh, I have to spray, there's bugs all over." But this is a ladybug larva, which you can kind of see the orange and black. All right, I could see it could turn into a ladybug, right? Kind of, sort of. Just to throw things off, some types of ladybugs have larvae that looks like this. That's another ladybug larva. It looks like a mealybug, which is a bad kind of bug. But usually if you look real close, if you have mealybugs or aphids, if you look close, you can see the predaceous insect is going to be the one moving around a lot faster. And if you watch even closer, you'll see that they'll actually be catching and eating the bad bugs. So be very careful and try to identify it before you just start killing. Spiders are the most unliked of all the insect family. Technically, we know they're not insects, they're arachnids. But there are 2 very common ones in our gardens that do a lot of work for us and we don't have to pay them anything. The first is a crab spider, which gets the name because it looks like a crab. And they sit very still and they lay in wait and they try to sit on like this guy's kind of like a greenish color. It sits on a green leaf and camouflages it himself before he goes out and catches his prey. Then there's also a jumping spider, which are very small. You can see this one's on somebody's fingernail. Very, very small spiders, usually sort of hairy or fuzzy, and they actually jump. You've probably seen them jumping. If you're ever out working in the yard, you can see them jumping around and moving from place to place. This is another picture of a jumping spider, and I think he's kind of cute. No? He's not like really scary looking like some of the spiders are. But a lot of insects will mimic, just like the caterpillar had eyes, spots that look like eyes to keep predators away. This insect, this spider, mimics an ant. If you look very closely, it looks like an ant, but if you see there's 8 legs, not 6. A lot of the insects will mimic, like there's walking sticks. There's ones will look like leaves, so that they're either hidden from predators or that they can prey easier on their victims. There's plant bugs. This is another one that looks like an ant. That's this guy here. He's a very voracious predator and camouflages himself to look like an ant so he can catch his prey faster. And another another insect in the assassin bug family, a type of assassin bug. This is the larva, and some people describe that as ant-like, but I don't quite think it looks ant-like to me because you can tell pretty much his abdomen, his backside kind of sticks up in the air and it's kind of orangey red. So I guess maybe could be considered ant-like, but he turns into this. This is a wheel bug. You can see they get quite large. They call it a wheel bug because this cog on the back of his shoulders looks like the cogs in a wheel, so they call him a wheel bug. He is an assassin bug, and he will eat whatever he can catch, pretty much. And this is one of the few insects that I won't handle. I'm into insects and diseases and things, so I don't mind holding bugs or spiders or, picking them up. But this is one I won't handle, so that's why I put this picture on here. If you see one of these out in your yard, don't squish it. Just move it aside if it's in your way. But they can deliver, if they're aggravated or provoked for some reason, they can deliver a very, very painful bite. And it's not just a bite like a bee sting that lasts for a couple days, it lasts for months, like up to 6 months they say. It's very painful. So I would just wear gloves or just use a stick or something and take a look at them and move them around. But they're not aggressive at all. So just be careful if you handle them. All right, anybody grow vegetables? Any vegetable gardeners? Have you ever grown broccoli or cabbage or Brussels sprouts or cauliflower? Yes? And do you get extra protein when you're growing your plants in that family, your cabbage plants? Well, usually when you have these types of plants in your garden, you see these little white cabbage moths. They call them cabbage moths flying around. And they're flying around and mating and laying eggs on your cabbage or your Brussels sprouts or your broccoli. And when the eggs hatch, they turn into these little caterpillars here. And these little caterpillars eat everything and make holes, and if you don't get them out before you cook them, give you a nice surprise on your dinner plate. But a little trick if you're growing cabbage, broccoli and cauliflowers and things like that, if you soak your broccoli or cauliflower in salt water before you cook it, it'll get rid of all the little caterpillars that are hiding in there. So a little trick for you. But wouldn't it be nice if you could have someone go out there and take care of them before you even brought them in the house? Right? So have someone go out there and get rid of all those little critters for you. Well, there actually are things out there getting rid of them for you. All our beneficial insects, all the predators. We're going to talk about two different types. There are predators, beneficial insects that are predators that will attack and eat the bad insects, and there are parasitic beneficial insects. And what they do is they lay their eggs on or in the bad insect, and that's not very good for the insect that has the eggs on or in it. So what happened to this little cabbage moth is a parasitic wasp came along, laid some eggs in it, and now they have all started hatching and they're eating that caterpillar from the inside out. So what you want to try to do is attract as many of these good parasitic wasps to your vegetable garden as you can, so that they'll do all the work for you. The way you can do that is along with your cabbages and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and broccolis, somewhere around the outskirts of your yard, not right in the garden with them, but somewhere near them, you want to plant things, and this is the mustard family of plants. This is basket of gold, is the yellow one here, this basket of gold. This is sweet alyssum or lobelia. They're annuals, but just plant them around the outskirts or somewhere in your yard. It attracts the beneficial insects, but it can also attract some of the bad ones. That's why you don't want to put it right next to it, but just nearby. And also, anybody have weeds in their yard? Yeah, if you have a couple weeds in your yard and you notice any of these yellow ones, these are the mustards. There's yellow rocket and wild mustard. These are also highly attractive to the beneficial parasitic wasps, the little flowers that the adults eat the nectar and the pollen from these flowers, so they're very attractive to them. Oh, speaking of vegetable gardening, I'm in the middle of a 3-part vegetable garden series at the Schrin Community Center. So if you have Wednesday nights open the next 2 weeks and you want to come out and have a free vegetable gardening classes, come on out and join me. Be happy to see you again. It's at right off of 22 on the Schrin Community Center down in Palmer. All right, back to our enemies. Beneficial insects, again, there are good insects and bad insects. You want to learn to identify who are the beneficials, so you know who to keep around to do your work for you and who you want to try to get rid of. And why would we want to attract them? Because you can cut back on your use of chemicals, and they're free. Free is good. Everybody likes free, right? Yes. All you have to do is put things out that they can eat, and they're happy. They'll work for food. All right, so some more good guys that you might not recognize so easily are, this guy on the top left is called an aphid lion. That's the larva of a green lacewing, and they eat many, many, many aphids, mites, whiteflies, all sorts of those little small, readily abundant on all our plants, bad insects. This is a brown lacewing on this side. Looks a little bit different, but also eats the same types of insects. And again, on the bottom are our two ladybug friends, the larvae from the ladybugs. So it's interesting, they're all sort of alligator shaped. Even the lightning bug sort of had an alligator shape to it. So that must have been a very good, over the years of evolution, a very good hunting shape for the animals to take. All right, again, the different types. The predators are the ones that will attack, kill, and eat multiple numbers of prey. And the parasites will lay an egg in or on a host, which then hatches and develops at the expense of that host. So some examples of that would be, anybody have tomato hornworms ever? Or see them around? Okay, they're called a hornworm because they have a little hook on their backside, a little horn, it looks like. But these you see these sometimes, it looks like little pieces of rice covering its body all over. Well, those pieces of rice aren't actually the egg, they're actually little cocoons. The eggs were inside the caterpillar. The egg hatched, the larvae did its thing, and when it was ready, it came out, spun a cocoon, and after it's ready, it leaves the cocoon. That's what this one's doing up here. He's actually hatching out of his cocoon. So you can see how teeny, teeny, tiny those must be. About the size of a grain of rice, actually. This is a cornworm. These little white spots on him are another type of parasitic wasp. Those eggs are going to hatch. The baby is going to burrow into the caterpillar, and again, they eat him from the inside out. So he won't be around for too long to cause any problems or eat our corn. You know, open them up. You ever peel back a stalk of corn and have a big juicy worm in there? Yeah. Yeah. So one thing you want to keep in mind, anybody like butterflies and hummingbirds? All right, have you ever seen a sphinx moth flying around? One of these guys looks like a hummingbird. If you look very closely though, you can see antenna. It's one of the very few moths that come out during the day. They're attracted to the same flowers that hummingbirds are attracted to. The larval form of a sphinx moth is a tomato hornworm. So if you're trying to keep a lot of these around, you want to have some tolerance to have some of these guys. If you get rid of all the tomato hornworms, you will see less and less of the sphinx moths flying around. So just bear that in mind. This guy on the right, you can see this is a female wasp, and she has her ovipositor, and she's actually depositing an egg onto this caterpillar. So you can imagine how they're going through their stages, their life stages. All right, syrphid flies are another common one you may have seen, but you might not recognize. A lot of people mistake them for sweat bees. These little, or they also call them flower flies or hover flies because they hover around flowers. So if you're out working in your gardens or working in the yard, you see these little bees, little tiny flies flying around. Looks like a little sweat bee. They're probably syrphid flies, and you want to try to encourage them to be around too. They can eat over 400 aphids during their development when they're larvae. The larvae are what eats the bugs. So this is the larva here, and it grows into the adult, which then eats the nectar and the pollen from plants like coriander, cilantro, Queen Anne's lace, things in the carrot family. They like a lot of little small flowered plants. They call them umbels. There's like a lot of little teeny flowers into one big flower. Gives them lots of places to choose their dinner from. This larva, actually, if you watch closely, you have to take a little time and look closer at things. You can see here on this picture, it's hard to tell, I don't have video on here, but if it was moving around, his backside is kind of attached to the leaf. He holds on there, and then he kind of like lifts up and moves around and tries to catch his prey. That's how he finds what he wants to eat. They don't do it by sight, he does it by touch. So he lifts up and moves around, and when he bumps into an aphid, he can eat it. So over 400 when they're small, so they eat quite a few, and then the adults turn into the flies, and then they eat the pollen and the nectar off the flowers. So of course we don't want to get rid of them, we want to keep the babies around. So we want to try to have things in the yard for them that they like, the flowers, and they need to have, of course, insects to eat. So you have to have a tolerance. You don't want to get rid of every aphid. You have to have a few for them to have to eat. Now, sweat bees, if you see sweat bees and you're not sure the difference, if you look close at them, sweat bees are a little more metallic looking. They have their abdomen, their thorax, I should say, is more shiny green metallic. Am I in your way? Oh, okay. More shiny green metallic, and that's the way you can tell the difference. And they're called sweat bees because they're attracted to the salt in our sweat. So they like to usually fly around people and try to get that salt. Another green metallic insect are the ground beetles. Some varieties of ground beetles are nice shiny green, and they're pretty to look at, and kids think they're fascinating. So if you see these little guys crawling around, these are known as caterpillar hunters. So of course what they like to eat would be caterpillars. Oh, and this is the yucky picture. So if you don't like it, don't look. This is there. This is a common ground beetle here, this green metallic. He's got little stripes on him. And if you look, there's like sort of a bronze edge around the outside of his shell, sort of bronze color. This one looks very similar, except it doesn't have a bronze edge around the outside of the shell. Very hard. You have to look very close to tell the difference. But these were brought in special and highly encouraged. These were brought in just to eat gypsy moth larvae. That's their favorite food. So we're trying to get the gypsy moths under control, and that's their job, just to eat caterpillars all day. Yum. Make anybody hungry? Okay, and this guy here this is just one of the black ground beetles. Just they come in all different colors. So I just wanted to show you there's black and shiny green and brown and all different colors on there. Did you know we didn't have gypsy moths before the Civil War? Kind of interesting. It was after the Civil War is when they brought gypsy moths over to try to get silk, because during the Civil War we had a shortage of cotton. They were trying to find an alternative, and that's when the gypsy moths came over. So it's a whole nother, if you're into history, that's a kind of another interesting factoid for you. All right, cowslip wasps, you probably won't confuse these for anything because you've probably never seen one before. Most of them are smaller than the period at the end of a sentence. So there could be thousands and millions in your yard and you wouldn't even know it because you're never going to see them. They parasitize more insects than any other group does. That includes the taconid wasps, the braconids. There's all different types of wasps and moths that parasitize, and they do more than the others, but we don't even see them. And they do it by they oviposit, they put their eggs inside the eggs of another insect. So they're so small, their eggs go inside another egg, and they can spend their entire development inside that insect egg. So you probably will never see one, but they're out there working very hard and killing lots of other bad insects for you. So where can I get some of these, right? You can buy, I've seen for sale, you can buy some of these egg casings. I think they're like 2 for $20 in some of the catalogs I've seen. But if you look closely in your yard, you may already have them. You want to try not to spray so often. Don't spray chemicals if you don't need to. And if you do have to spray a chemical, use something that's non-residual. Try to use horticultural oils or dormant spray oils rather than just using toxic pesticides that are going to stay around and kill anything inadvertently. Have a lot of diversity in the plants that you have in your yard. Keep things with a lot of flowers and keep them blooming, just like attracting hummingbirds and butterflies especially, as early in the spring as you can get flowers blooming. Crocuses, geronicum, leopard's bane is a little daisy flower that blooms early in the spring, all the way up until frost. And if you can have more flowers and things blooming for the adults to feed on, that will encourage them to come to your yard. And of course, just like anything else, they need to have a source of water. So if you have a bird bath or something, you're already covered. But if you don't, you might want to consider keeping a little shallow tray with some pebbles in it, just with some water, some wet, so that they can go out and get water when they need to. And that will keep them in your yard and keep them happy. Okay, things in the carrot family, again, like we talked about earlier with that sylphid fly, the caraway, coriander or cilantro, fennel, Queen Anne's lace, and dill. If you have that in your yard, those you can actually interplant in your gardens and in your flower beds. That will work very well to have them mixed in there. You've heard of companion planting? Some of you vegetable gardeners? Companion planting. Usually it's the plant that helps another plant, but these plants help your beneficial insects. So another part of companion planting. Things in the aster family, which includes most of the things that are sort of daisy-shaped flowers: cosmos, coneflower, sunflowers, gaillardia, bloom a long time, and the soldier beetles and ladybugs like those types of flowers to go on. And those you can also incorporate right into your vegetable and flower gardens. The mustard family are the ones we talked about earlier. We want to keep those along the outside. So if you want to grow these types of vegetables, you want to grow some of these flowers too, but keep them around the outskirts so that they're not attracting the bad ones too. Anybody ever get those Japanese beetle traps? No? You did once, yes. I always think it's interesting because the box says, attracts Japanese beetles. Why do you want to attract them? You're trying to get rid of them. So if you get one, put it in your neighbor's yard or back in a field or somewhere far away. Don't put it right next to what you're trying to keep them away from. So these are going to work sort of like that. They'll attract the beneficials, but they can attract the bad ones too. Okay, legumes, they're also attracted to many beneficials, but they're more cover crops usually. So if you do a lot of gardening and you do alfalfa and or you maybe try growing some fava beans, if you like fava beans, they are very good, sort of like a lima bean sort of thing. Hairy vetch or sweet clover, they're very attractive to the beneficials, and then you just till them into your garden afterwards. Okay, also things in the verbena family are very attractive to all the beneficials because, again, they're very small little flowers making up one big flower. Again, the term for that is umbel. It's an umbel. So lantanas, Buenos Aires verbena, lilac verbenes, they're all great for attracting those type of insects, but they're not hardy around here. You have to bring them in the wintertime. So unfortunately, we can't have them all winter long. All right, and our pollinators. Our pollinators are so important. We've all heard of the colony collapse disorder with the honeybees, but there are many, many native bees that do just as important role of pollinating that we should try to encourage. And we've been looking around here since I'm doing this talk, and we haven't, if any of you find anyone that sells mason bee houses, which usually have these little tubes on them. Sometimes they're teardrop shaped, they could be square, but we haven't found anyone here that's selling them. So we might have to get those for next year for everybody. But mason bees are a native bee that does a lot of pollinating, but they don't work in hives like honeybees do. They are solitary, they're by themselves. And when they're ready to lay their eggs, they go in these little tube-shaped containers, and then they plug up the holes until then the baby hatches, and then they come back out. So that's how they keep reproducing. But very important to try to encourage your beneficial or native bees to do their job. Wasps are very important pollinators, even though people don't like wasps and things that sting and go buzz and bite you, but they're beneficial parasitic wasps, and other wasps are very good pollinators. Butterflies are very good pollinators, and you wouldn't think of butterflies and hummingbirds as pollinating while they're going flower to flower, but every time they go to a flower, they're picking up pollen, and you can see on this hummingbird's beak that he's going to go to the next flower, so that'll help pollinate things. And bats. Anybody have bats in their yard? Okay. Some people say, oh, I don't want any. I don't want bats. I hate bats. They don't like them. I love bats because I hate mosquitoes. And bats eat thousands and thousands of mosquitoes, among other things, gnats and Japanese beetles and all sorts of other bad bugs. So bats would be very beneficial, and then they also pollinate. When they're going flower to flower, they also pollinate. So they're very helpful to have in the yard. And I think I'm at the end here. Yes. So be sure to check my website. I'm going to give you all a little gift with my website on it. Be sure to check that next week, and we're going to have some links there if you want to have some handouts if you want more information, and some other sites.